The most famous of these land grants, and the last one we'll talk about, was granted to someone that we recognize even if we maybe don't recognize him just yet. Moses Austin, one of the most famous early Missouri settlers, father of Stephen F. Austin, who's my Texas? You've heard of Stephen F. Austin. Yeah, the father of Texas. And Stephen F. Austin was actually partly raised in Missouri. Moses Austin, a little background on Moses Austin. Unlike so many of those early settlers in the Missouri Ozarks, or the Ozarks in general, Moses Austin was from New England. You didn't get a lot of New Englanders in the Ozarks, but he had been born and raised in Connecticut. As a young man, he had gone to work for a Philadelphia business, and that work eventually took him down into Virginia. In the 1790s, he established himself as the premier lead producer in the state of Virginia. He was actually living in that Upland South area that we talked about in western Virginia. And in the 1790s, he began to look around for a place to expand his lead mining and lead smelting operations to, as the lead industry was slumping a little bit in Virginia. And he had heard about all of these old French and Spanish lead mines in Missouri. In 1797, he made his way to Missouri. He almost froze to death coming across Indiana and Illinois. He got to St. Louis and regained his strength, went down into the Ozarks, into what now is Washington County, Missouri, visited some lead mines there and decided, okay, this is the place for me. He petitioned the Spanish officials in St. Louis for a land grant. They gave him roughly 1 league of land. Does anybody know what a league was? A league was roughly it was a square distance that roughly you could walk in an hour's time. What do we usually walk, what's assumed about 3 miles an hour? So a league was roughly 3 miles by 3 miles, 3 miles square, or 9 miles square, 3 by 3 miles. Big piece of land, lots of acres in a league. And he was granted a league by the Spanish government on Britton Creek, or sometimes called Burton Creek or Britton Creek. Usually not called Breton Creek. You know, we just don't pronounce anything the way it's spelled in the Ozarks. And there was already, as you can see there from the French name, Mina Britton, there was already lead mining that had been going on there for several years, but he was given this big chunk of lead mining area land. In 1798, he moved his family over, his extended family over, and several other families of workers. He brought slaves with him from Virginia and started mining lead and smelting lead. And within a few years had become the leading lead producer in all of Spanish America, even before it became part of the Louisiana Purchase to the United States. You can see there roughly 9.4 square miles, almost 3 by 3. And Moses Austin would have eventually found the town of Potosi on his land grant that he had. Potosi is still the seat of Washington County today, and that's the old Austin land grant there. And near the end of his life, a few years after he had founded Potosi, he also founded a town on the Mississippi called Herculaneum. For those of you who are from the St. Louis area, downriver from St. Louis, Herculaneum became a very important port-type town in those days as well. And as his fortunes began to wane a little bit in Missouri, he turned his sights to Texas, and he had actually gone to Texas and had helped arrange for a Spanish, of course Texas was part of the Spanish Empire as well, and he had helped arrange to get a land grant in Texas that he then was never able to take advantage of because he died before he before he ever made it back to Texas. But his son, Stephen F. Austin, went, and the rest is Texas history, I guess you could say. But Moses Austin is probably the best known of many of those early Anglo settlers. And there were lots of others who went on to success, or had children who went on to success to become governors and senators and stuff like that, who lived in the eastern Ozarks on those Spanish land grants in those early days, but none of them were better known than Moses Austin.